So here is some quick help and guidance on the most common mistakes made on the Unit 1 assessment. So number 1 looks like the story problem that was on your assessment. So it says there are 40 llamas on a farm in the year, this should be 2000, my apologies. The population increased by 250% over the next 5 years. Of the new population, 35% of them are male. How many llamas are females? So most of us did a fantastic job of realizing that this was a percent problem and knowing that we needed to set up this proportion. Remember, our percent is always what goes in this position. So 250 is going in this position, and the total number of llamas that we have is 40, so our total goes on the bottom, right? It's part over the whole. So the whole is the total, so our total is going to be 40. This is something we can then solve by cross multiplying, right? So we'll say 100x, and you can use a calculator. Most of us did a fantastic job of solving, so I'm not super concerned there. Now, the piece that we did miss was reading that this then says increased by. So if this is increased by tells us to add. So we need to take that 100 and add it to the original 40. So our new population is now 140, and that's the step the majority of us missed, which means we're now taking that new number of 140 and finding 35% of that. Again, lots of you jumped to making this second proportion correctly, but you forgot to add before you did that, and that's where the mistakes then happened. So we're gonna get 100x. Okay, this is something we can solve. Now, this is telling us how many of them are male, and we want to know how many are females. So if the number of male is 49 out of 140, we're gonna need to take 140 minus 49. And we need to make sure that we give it a label. If you did not have a label, you did miss points. Okay, number 2 is asking us to evaluate. So if we're going to evaluate, we are going to plug 5 in for W and -6 in for Y. And most of us did an excellent job of realizing that we needed to do this. You can type this directly into the calculator just like you see it, but if you choose to do this by hand, then you need to recognize that a negative times a negative is a positive. And so this would give us an answer of 32. Number 3, for many of us, we just lost the inequality sign or didn't follow it all the way through. So if we want to solve this, we can divide by the 2/3, which is fine. But we need to keep track of where these are placement-wise. So this is going to give us a -12 is less than or equal to y. Dividing by 2/3 is not a reason to flip the sign. However, rewriting it with the variable first is a reason to flip the sign. Now, several on your assessment got a repeating decimal and gave me something like this as your answer. This is rounded and it doesn't have the inequality sign. If you're gonna give this in the decimal form, it has to have that repeating bar with it. Okay, do not round your answers. You need to give an exact answer. Number 4 has the fraction all the way through it. If this fraction is all the way through, then we are undoing that denominator first. So we're gonna undo dividing by 7 by multiplying by 7. And then we will undo addition with subtraction. So just making sure we do those in the correct order. Number 5 is the opposite of that, right? Number 5, it is not all part of the fraction. And since it is not all part of the fraction, we need to move the 8 first. So we're gonna undo adding 8 by subtracting 8, right? That 8 is not part of the fraction.
Good morning, Shamrocks.
We're just gonna ignore the noise in the background. So we're gonna do 15 minus 8.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Then we can multiply by the 2.
No additional announcements today. Be
right? So
kind,
7 times
work hard,
2
and make the world a better place. Have a great day, Shamrocks.
gives us 14. Multiplying by 2 is not a reason to flip the sign. So this is going to be B is greater than 14. Oh, next page. Sorry, I thought it would be back. Number 6 was a huge issue on the assessment. We need to remember that we cannot graph when the variable is not first. We are graphing it incorrectly if we're graphing it, right? We need this variable to be first, and that is a reason to flip the sign, right? I change the direction of this sign. This is -7, this is -5. That's how a negative number line orders. Most of us were good with knowing that this is an open circle. We just shaded the wrong direction because we did not write it with the variable first. Okay, twice a number. Several of you knew that you wanted a 2 here, but you tried to write a multiplication symbol in between the 2 and the x, and that caused some confusion. So I would suggest not writing a multiplication symbol in between the 2, but just knowing when they sit next to each other. Decrease by 5. Knowing our inequality symbols was also a big concern. So is at least, if you do not know what that means, you should be looking it up in your notes and practicing those. But is at least is greater than or equal to. When it says what are the numbers, that is asking us to solve. So we need to solve. If you did not solve, you lost points. Now, if we can solve it, right, I don't think our solving is an issue. It's making sure we're recognizing to solve it. Number 8 asks for the median. Remember, there are 3 things that we learned in middle school that associated with this. The mean, the median, and the mode. Okay, the mode is the number that is most common, the one that happens the most. The median is the number in the middle. So if you line them all up in numerical order, what number is in the middle? The median is the mean is the average. So this is where we want to add them all up and then divide by how many there are. So in this particular one, it asks for the median. So we want them to be lined up in numerical order, which they are. And then we're just going to work our way to the middle. And 27 is in the middle. If you get 2 numbers in the middle, because you don't have an odd number, then you need to take the average of those 2. So you would add them together and divide by 2. Our last one, this is something that we want to solve. Okay, so we're going to solve this. Now, on your assessment, you got a fraction. And I think the problem that came into play is many of you freaked out about the fraction because it was a weird decimal. Don't try and work with it as a decimal because plugging a repeating decimal back in, you can't type a repeating decimal into your calculator. So either turn it into a fraction, or what you're going to have to do is if you stuck with a rounded decimal, when you plug it back in, you're going to have to look at the multiple choice answers and then see which one is the closest.